Yay, I nearly forgot to record. So it's the thing that is always so bad, like you need a post-it note, right? All right, so I'm going to share my screen and then we are going to get into the training. All right. So let me just find. All right, so you should be able to see my slides now. Let me know if you can't. And let me know that you can. I'm just going to pull the chat out. Can you please make sure you're muted? So there's definitely someone that's not muted. So please make sure you're muted. Just letting a few more people in that are in the waiting room. All right, cool. All right, so we are going to dive in. Not as great being on my laptop for this sort of thing, but we will make the best of it. All right. Okay, just can see someone that's not muted there. Andreas, I can see you've got your hand up. Perhaps put what you want to ask in the chat for now. And I can come back to it later. I just want to make sure we get in and get moving on this training. All right. So, what am I doing? There we go. So we are, sorry guys, I've still got people joining late. Okay. All right, so this training is all about, can you make money from astrology? Hint, you absolutely can, lots of people do. But I guess there sometimes can be a bit of a limiting belief around being able to make good money from astrology, being able to charge well for astrology. You absolutely can. There's lots of different business models that work for astrology. So I'm going to be talking about, I guess, some of the reasons why now is a great time to have an astrology business. And I'm going to go through some of the different ways that you can do that. And then we've got a worksheet that I'm going to talk you through, and you'll be able to ask any questions. If you have questions as we go through, just put them into the chat and I will come back to those at the end. Okay. All right. So what's going on here? Yeah. Okay. So a little bit about me. For those of you that are new to my work, I have studied intensively over the last few years in soul and energy medicine, intuitive arts and astrology. I'm an in-demand astrologer over at catherinehawking.com. I'm also the creator of the Embodied Soul Astrology Academy and the Level 1 Business Astrology Certification. So the Business Astrology Certification includes 10 astrology courses. And there's going to be a level 2 next year as well. So for advanced astrology techniques. Andreas, please put your question in the chat. I can see your hand again, but if you can put it in the chat, I'd prefer that. I'm also the Chief Designer and CEO of Pisces Creative Co. So this is a boutique branding house for soulful female entrepreneurs that combines astrology and branding. So I do astro branding over at Pisces Creative Co. as well. Sorry, the moving between slides is being a bit funky. So underpinning these soulful modalities is 10 years experience as a business coach, mentor, and online course and launch strategist. So I've worked with thousands of clients, and I have also created and run a $1 million e-course. This was the e-course launch formula that I ran for many, many years. That was really, really successful. But I got to a point where it just wasn't filling up my soul anymore. So I actually let that go and moved into my current astrology business. So my teachings have resulted in hundreds of e-courses and e-programs being released into the world. And it's one of the specialties that I bring to my level 1 students as well, helping them really look at what their astrological magic is and how they can then package that up into their own programs. Okay. So today we're going to cover, can you really make money from astrology? We're going to look at why now is a great time to learn astrology, some astrology revenue and business models, and how different businesses have harnessed astrology. Okay, so they're the things we're going to be looking at today. Oh, hi, Andreas. Andreas is from Vienna, Austria. Awesome. Nice to have you. Okay. Whoops. So can you really make money from astrology? Well, I remember asking myself this and other questions when I was thinking about creating an astrology business. And, you know, some of the questions that went through my head were things like, would people really pay well for readings? I can remember thinking about the amount of time and effort that would take me to really prepare for a reading in the way that I wanted to. And thinking, am I really going to be able to charge an amount that feels like an equal exchange for the time and effort that I was putting in and that people were paying for? I can remember asking myself whether I could prepare readings in a cost-effective way. So kind of like the opposite of that. Well, like, would I be able to do it in a way that would be effective for me and kind of meet what the market expected? I remember asking myself, would people pay for premium e-course training in this market, in the area of astrology training? Because I saw a lot of quite cheap astrology courses out there. I can remember asking myself, could I really have my own astrology magic? You know, could I really have my own special contribution to the world of astrology? And could this ever be a full-time income for me? And more than that, you know, an abundant business that employed other people and really, you know, spread wealth. Okay. So these are the types of questions I ask myself. But before I get into that, I want to talk about why now is a great time for astrology businesses. Well, what I found over the last few years, and we're getting into even more than a few years now with COVID, what I found was that as the COVID pandemic hit, my business actually grew substantially. What I found was that during this COVID period of time, there were a few factors. I found that people were at home a lot more. They were going out less. They had less activities they were either having to do or able to do. And so they had this additional time to really spend on learning, on self-development, on self-exploration. Okay, so I had a lot of people purchasing my courses. But what I also noticed was a really big uptake in astrology readings because people were looking for clarity. They were looking for a sense of like, what does this all mean? Why is this happening? You know, for a lot of people, it was a point where they slowed down enough to really think about their life and what they wanted to do with it. Okay, and people are also wanting connection through online programs because they weren't able to get that connection out in the real world. So the other thing is that according to Yahoo Finance, back in 2020, around the time that the COVID pandemic started, astrology was one of 4 of the fastest growing sectors in the world. So it's one of the top 4 fastest growing sectors. And astrology and ancient science has experienced massive resurgence in recent times. It's also becoming a lot more socially acceptable. Certainly in Australia, I think it's definitely more widespread. In the US and Australia, it is probably less socially acceptable. Some people might look at you a bit sideways, which is where all the fears come in that we'll talk about tomorrow. But it's definitely growing in popularity again. And as I said, my astrology business has continued to grow through the COVID pandemic. My calendar gets booked out weeks in advance a lot of the time for my readings, and all of my programs are full and thriving. So that really tells me that people are really looking for the clarity that astrology brings. I also read a more recent statistic that the astrology industry was worth something like 2.4 billion per year now. So it's a massive area. So yes, you can absolutely make money from astrology. I know that we can sometimes have blocks around making money from more spiritual practices, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. We're not going to kind of let that into our mindset today. We're just going to look more open-mindedly about ways that we can make money from astrology. Okay. So there's a whole lot of ways you can make money from astrology. You can do astrology readings. You can create astrology e-courses or ebooks. You can create physical books or card decks. You can run live training or retreats that incorporate astrology. You can incorporate astrology into group coaching programs. You can weave it into one-on-one coaching. You can create astrology apps. You can create astrology-based products. And you can create services that use astrology to differentiate themselves. So I'm going to go through some examples of these. Please make sure you're muted. I think there might be someone who's not muted at the moment. So please just make sure you are, because it allows the sound to be much better for everyone. So astrology readings. So through my business over at catherinehocking.com, I offer natal chart, year ahead, business chart, and launch chart readings. But really the types of readings you can create are limitless. And part of what I do with my level 1 students is I help them work out what they can offer in terms of an astrology reading that is different and unique to their astrology magic. You can do these online, in person, or even via a report that you send to people. So I've got a couple of examples on this slide. So this top one here is an example of a business where you can put in your details and you can pay, a smallish sum of money for a report on your birth chart. Now, of course, this is going to be fairly generic. It's not the same as getting a custom astrology reading with an astrologer, but it's certainly one way that you can go in terms of making money from astrology. And there are some like white label astrology programs out there where you can purchase report generators and that sort of thing. The below one here is an example of a much more specialized type of astrology reading. So this is a business out of Bounds Astrology, and this guy does astrocartography readings. So astrocartography is something that I'm certifying in at the moment, and it looks at a map of the world, and it looks at planetary lines based on your chart laid over a map of the world. And astrocartography can tell you things like the best places for you to live, best place for you to travel to or do business in. It's really, really interesting. So you can get really specialized with your astrology reading as well. So this guy, I think, does things like relocation readings if people are wanting to move and relocate somewhere. So really interesting. So then we have astrology e-products. So an e-product is really anything that's like a digital product, right? So it's something that you buy online. You don't get anything physical that you can hold in your hands, okay? So it might be a course or an ebook. It could be meditations. It can be all sorts of things. And there's really a gap in the market for quality astrology training on specialist topics or for specific audiences. So, rather than it being a specialist topic, you might be kind of niching in on a specific audience and tailoring it to them. And really for these, you can charge anywhere from, I put $19, but it could be $1 through to, over $2,000 for these types of programs. Now, obviously, depending on how you've packaged it up, the quality of the products, all of these things come into how much you charge for them. But really, you can make a lot of money for astrology e-products. Now, I have e-products all the way through from a $19 Lunar toolkit, I think is my cheapest e-product, through to I have my astrology certification that is all delivered online up to around 4,000 US. So, there's a big variance on what you can charge there. Astrology books or card decks. So there are lots of astrology books out there, which really tells us that there's a big demand. There's also There's less astrology decks out there. There are a few really great ones. I'm working on one myself at the moment. So I'm working on a business astrology deck that I'm hoping to release by the end of the year. But these can be really good things to create. Quality astrology books are still a great way to earn income, as well as to gain credibility. I would say that writing an astrology book for most of you wouldn't be the first thing you do through an astrology-based business. It's typically something you do when you're further along in your education, your study, your knowledge. But if you are someone that has actually been working with astrology for years and years, you might be in a position to do that. Astrology decks are also a great way to be creative and earn revenue. So I've put pictures of a couple of ones that I like here. So there's the Black Moon astrology cards. And then I actually can't see the name. And I've got the book here from this deck that I brought with me. It's the Heavenly Bodies astrology deck by Lily Ashwell. Is another really nice one. And as I said, I'm going to be launching my own one at the end of the year, but that can be a great thing to create as well. It's really nice. What I particularly like with the Lily Ashwell one is her interpretations, the way she writes. Probably the design isn't like my style of design, but I really love the interpretations and the way that she writes in them for sure. Alrighty. So you can bring astrology into live training or retreats. So you can run live training workshops locally on astrology, or you could hold a retreat specifically focused on astrology. So this is something that I'm really wanting to do in the future, perhaps next year in the US when I come over for one of the major astrology conferences. I may do this where I want to really bring in some really embodied astrology activities into a retreat space. But you can also just bring it in as one small element of the retreat, okay? So you could run a retreat. If you're someone who has a background, say, in yoga or breath work or mindfulness, you might have the rest of the retreat might be focused on some of these other techniques, but then you might just have one part of the retreat where you do something to do with astrology. Group coaching programs. So a couple of years ago, I ran an online mastermind called the Soulful Business Mistress Mind. And I took participants on a journey to understand themselves and their businesses better through astrology. So I worked with about 8 women, and we looked at all of the main placements in their chart through this Mistress Mind process. So you can do something similar. You can pick a specific topic or niche and deliver a similar style of program. I've also been in masterminds where astrology readings have been offered as part of the package. And we've often done like group astrology readings where an astrologer has come in and given fairly short and sharp insights about each person's chart. And it's kind of been shared to learn more about each other in the group. So you could either have your own mastermind or group coaching program that brings astrology in, or you could even pitch yourself as someone that comes in and provides these group readings or specialist trainings for people that run masterminds. So that's another way that you could earn money from that. So you can absolutely bring it into your one-on-one coaching, consulting, and therapy. I've got a client at the moment who works with women kind of in that midlife crisis, midlife transit phase of life. And she's bringing astrology into a broader coaching framework that she's been accredited in, but she's now weaving astrology into that as well. It's really cool. So you can bring it into your toolkit when you work one-on-one with clients. For example, you might be a money mindset coach. You could look at specific parts of their chart relating to money and abundance. A few years ago, I was going through a really difficult time. I had my Pluto square Pluto transit going on, and it was kicking my butt. And so I booked in a therapy session with a therapist who combines therapy and astrology. He's quite a well-known astrologer, actually, but he's also a trained therapist. And I think that merging therapy and astrology is just incredibly powerful. And it was a really great session for me. So by bringing this in, whether you do coaching, whether you do consulting, whether you do therapy work, I really believe that it just makes what you do so much deeper and more transformational. And it also really helps to differentiate it from other people offering similar services. So astrology apps as well. This obviously isn't for everyone to do this, but there are some great astrology apps out there that people can use daily, weekly, or monthly. So a couple of examples are the Pattern, CoStar, Sanctuary. I've got some images from Sanctuary and CoStar there. Astro Future is another one. But, you know, building astrology apps, if you have those sorts of skills or you are happy to use those skills, kind of engage those skills for someone to develop it for you, this can be a really great option too. Astrology-based products. I do love this as well. So this is where people have taken an existing product and they have woven astrology into it. So I have a colleague that I studied astrology with years ago, and she creates custom perfumes for people based on their astrology chart. There are also various brands of essential oils that have oil blends based on your zodiac sign. I have seen lots of candles out there based on your zodiac sign, and they would have picked different oils to go in the candles linked to your zodiac sign. Artwork, as you can see there as well, based on your zodiac sign. A really cool one I came across, actually my sister-in-law bought it for my birthday a couple of years ago, was a wine company that match wine to your zodiac sign, which I just, I never would have thought of that, but that service is there. It's incredible. Jewelry, there's lots of beautiful zodiac-based jewelry out there. So really, any sort of product you can think of, you can weave astrology into it, either in a more generic way, like just based on someone's sun sign, or in a really deep way, like this colleague of mine who, creates this perfume based on a whole lot of different factors in a client's chart. So you can also have services that use astrology to differentiate. So my business, Pisces Creative Co., combines branding and astrology. And this really makes my brand design business really stand out from the crowd, because there's not too many businesses that do this, okay? There's a couple, but there's not too many. So this has been a way to really differentiate my branding service. And to be honest, I don't really need to market this business very much at all, because people either know they want to bring astrology into their branding, or they wouldn't ever even think about bringing astrology into their branding. So people just kind of, when they find me, they get to my site, they just know that I'm the right designer for them. Tammy's saying that's how I found you. That's awesome, Tammy. So again, as I say, I don't need to do, and Melissa, I did Melissa's branding through Pisces Creative Co. That's how she found me as well. But what I love about this is, I don't even really need to market this business much. I just really organically and easily attract clients for my branding services. So that's really cool thing about bringing astrology into, something that wouldn't typically have astrology with it. So now is the time for you to pop any questions you have. You might have a question around what you currently do and how to bring astrology in, whether it makes sense to bring astrology in with what you currently do. You might have a question about some of the different revenue models that I've talked about there. But I'm going to move over to the worksheet and then I'll come back to questions, okay? So the worksheet can be downloaded. So on the Astrology Biz Incubator page here, the recording from today will get put here later on. And you can just click on this this button here to download the day one resource, okay? But I'm going to bring it up. I've already got it downloaded and I'm going to talk through it. Tammy says, I'm branding as an astro coach and EFT practitioner. Awesome. That's super cool. I love it. Tarina asked, do you teach certified astro branding? So I have an astro brand course over at the Embodied Soul Astrology Academy that you can self-study through. I probably will run another live round of that perhaps before the end of this year. And look, I probably will certify in it eventually. It's not on like the plan for 2022, but I may create a certification in 2023. I'm still working through whether that's something that I'm going to do or not. Okay. So Tatiana says, are there companies that provide the technical aspect of a report with whom we can partner to create our own report product? Yeah, so there, look, I know that Melissa has on her site, when I was working on her site, and it's something that I hadn't come across before, but it's a company where you kind of get these white label reports. Please, whoever's just joined, please mute yourself. So but also, I may need to, okay, that's better. Also, so I use a software called Astro Gold. The Windows version is Solarfire, and both of those software come with Astro Gold. It's an additional fee that you pay, but they come with the ability to produce reports from the software. Now, what I'll say is these are not, they're fairly generic, okay? So if you're going to sell these reports, don't keep the cost lower. You want your own interpretations, not someone else's. I think you would need to engage someone to develop that, Tatiana. So I think you would need to come up with all of your own interpretations for different placements. And then you'd probably need to engage a developer to create something that could generate the report for you. Yeah. I don't personally know of who you'd go to for that. But I would say that developers, just general like web developer type people would probably be able to point you in the direction of someone. Okay, so if we go on over to the worksheet, the idea of this worksheet is for you to sit down and think through how you might bring astrology into your business. And I give you some examples of the things that we've talked about. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here. So go through, do you want to offer astrology readings? If so, which types? Maybe there's a specific type of astrology reading you want to offer. And the idea of this worksheet is your ideal astrology business model, by the way. Do you want to offer astrology e-products like an e-course or an e-book or something else? And put in the details, like a bit of a summary. If you think you'd like to offer an e-course, a bit of a really short, like couple of sentences of about what, right? Do you want to write a book? If so, what is the book topic? Do you want to create a card deck? If so, what would make that deck special, right? Because there are so many Oracle and Tarot decks out there. We really need our decks to stand out from the crowd, right? So what would make it special? Do you want to run live workshops that incorporate astrology? If so, think about what the topic would be. Do you want to run retreats? And if so, how would you bring it into the retreat? Would it be an astrology themed retreat? Would it be astrology readings as part of the retreat? Group astrology session or training at the retreat or some other way? Melissa has responded to Tatiana. They have an option for that in Time Passages program, but it was quite extensive to build out. That's why I have a white label program for passive visitors. I add my own interpretations to reports in live readings. That's a really great example of how Melissa is using it. Okay, so group coaching programs. How would you bring astrology into the coaching program? How would you weave it in? Tatiana, a white label is where it's actually someone else's interpretations, right? but they sell you effectively a license to use their interpretations. And then you can kind of brand it yourself. Okay, so we can have white label skincare, white label makeup. You know, like I noticed that Mecca and Sephora, for example, they have very, very similar makeup that come out at different times, particularly around Christmas time. It's clearly a white label product where they've just kind of put their brand on top of it. So you can also think about services that combine astrology to differentiate in the market. So what services do you already or want to offer that you could create an approach using astrology to differentiate and make the service more personal, transformational, and soul aligned? So think about, you know, what you're already offering, and is there a way that you could weave astrology into that? Oops. And then what other ideas do you have for bringing astrology into your business? All right, so this is a worksheet to really get you to start thinking about how you can bring astrology in to your business and actually what you want your business to look like. So spend a little bit of time thinking about, think about yourself, think about your personality, think about your skills, how you work best. Like, readings aren't for everyone, okay? Creating training isn't for everyone. We're not all good at that, right? Some of us won't want to go through the process of creating a physical product. So really think through what's going to work for you personally, okay? So that is the training for today. Please let me know if you've got any more questions before we finish up for today. Tomorrow at the same time, we are going to be looking at fears and limiting beliefs when it comes to using astrology, having astrology as part of your business. And even if you think you don't have many, I am pretty sure that something will get highlighted for you tomorrow, because I had a lot. I had a lot that came through for me. Now, of course, I've moved through them. I haven't let them stop me, but I am still working through stuff, like even just claiming I am a business astrologer when I introduce myself. So at the retreat I was on this week, when people asked me what I did, I was like, oh, I'm a business astrologer. A few years ago, I would have really struggled to say that and like own that, okay? I particularly, you know, within my family, I come from a family of non-religious spiritual intellectuals. They think astrology's crazy, right? There's all of this stuff that comes up, all right, around feeling respected, feeling normal, maybe feeling like a bit of an outsider, like all sorts of stuff comes up, right? And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Lisa asked, how did you decide to offer what you offer? Look, it's been a journey. And as I said before, I had my astrology business. My main business was teaching people how to create online training and online courses. And I had a lot of my own online courses. I'm also a qualified trainer. I'm a qualified coach, right? So I've got a lot of those skills naturally. So majority of what I do is training, because that is my strength. Like I'm a teacher at heart. That's just who I am. What I do is I learn something, I simplify it, and I pass it on. That's my gift, okay? But I also really love doing astrology readings. I just don't do a lot of them because I don't have the energy to be doing them all day, every day. So I keep the amount of them that I do to like a set amount. And so just over time, I fell into what feels right for me. But the biggest focus in my business is the level 1 certification, because I am a teacher trainer at heart, and that's where I want to be spending the majority of my energy. Okay, so I'm just looking at comments here. Andrea says astrology is an experience-based science to me. I believe astrology is a science too. In fact, it was really the first science, okay? It's an ancient science. It's just that in this modern world, some of the respect for this very ancient science has been lost. And that is part of why I do what I do. I'm getting the tingles now, getting the soul tingles. It's part of why I do what I do, because I want to bring this beautiful ancient science back into the modern world. And I think we really need it. We really need what astrology gives us. So what does astrology give us? It gives us a lot of self-acceptance and self-love, right? Because we can see our chart, we can see all these things about ourselves that we may have tried to repress, we may have tried to hide, we may have felt bad about, and it gives us this radical self-love and self-acceptance. It also gives us a lot of clarity. It also helps us to understand that everything in life is cyclic, okay? It's all about cycles, and the bad cycles or the difficult cycles, the challenging cycles will end. And there will be positive, amazing cycles as well. And it allows us to really learn to work with our cycles rather than against them. And I think that is a gift that we really need in the modern world. So that's really why I do what we do. So I'm just going to mute someone. Yeah. So Lisa said, how long did you study astrology before you felt confident enough to step into your role as a business astrologer? Look, again, I think I don't want to speak for everyone, every human being out there, right? I obviously have skills in training and teaching already. That obviously helped me, right? But the thing with astrology is there's only so much reading you can do. There's only so much study you can do. You can't really become an astrologer if you don't start doing astrology, right? It is like, you know, there's this saying, it's not coming to my head, but there's a saying that I know of that is kind of about the fact that we only really learn through teaching, right? We learn what we don't know through teaching. We learn what we need to dive more deeply into through teaching. We learn how to explain things better. We just have to get in and do it, right? And it's the same with astrology readings. You won't really get a sense of confidence until you start having that one-on-one exchange with someone. You see their aha moments, you see that recognition light up in them, you see the resonance, and that boosts your confidence. And each time you do that, your confidence gets boosted a little bit more. So here's the thing. I think that you need to start practicing it as soon as possible. So for me, I did a 1-year certification. I've done a lot of study since then, right? But I studied for a year. I've read probably over 50 astrology books. I've done a lot of other courses and smaller certifications since then. But I actually started weaving it into my work within 6 months, absolutely. Possibly even less than that. But I started slowly. I just wove it in a little bit, got feedback from my clients, then, you know, built my confidence over time. Elise says, any hints on where to get ideas for classes, retreats for clients who are beginners to astrology? Elise, I'm not sure exactly what you mean there, but when people are beginners, just focusing on a really simple element. So maybe just looking at their moon placement. A lot of people don't realize they have a moon placement. And so what I would do is I would collect their details prior to the class or the retreat. And I would do that research myself. You know, they've got the moon in this sign and this house. And then maybe you do a session with them all around their moon placement and what that means. But don't try and cover the entire chart when you're working with beginners, okay? And again, you've got to decide, are you teaching them astrology or are you just illuminating their astrology for them? Teaching someone astrology is very different to sharing, you know, a certain placement and what that means with someone. Okay, you don't necessarily need to be teaching them astrology. Okay. 40 years in astrology. I was at an astrology conference, Andreas, a month or two ago, and it was funny. There was a joke at this conference that they were all new because they'd only been studying astrology for 50 years or something. You know, they were a lot of much older people. And that is so true. It is a lifelong, I call astrology a lifelong meditation. It's not something you master in 6 months or a year. It's something you just keep learning. And there's just so many layers, so many different techniques. And it's this beautiful lifelong journey and lifelong learning. If you love to keep learning, then you'll love astrology because there's so much to uncover. So Ellen has asked, what made my $1 million e-course so successful? Components, topics, did you use electional astrology to launch it? No, Eleanor, back when I had this course, I hadn't even studied astrology at that time. So no, I definitely didn't use electional astrology to launch it. I'm quite tuned in. So perhaps, you know, I just intuitively picked a good time to launch it. What made it successful? I think that one of the things I'm really good at is seeing a need in the market and filling it, you know, and I just saw it coming. This was over 10 years ago when I created this course. I saw the online revolution coming and I was like, there's a need here. That, you know, it was this tipping point from online learning being something that really only universities, colleges, big corporations had, into this moment where there was all this technology where just like the smallest entrepreneur could do it, right? And I was just like, this is a massive growth area. So I think I just saw the opportunity and got in and did it. There's lots more to that. Okay. It was a very high quality training program. I invested a lot of money into it. Like there's lots of different factors that made it successful, but you know, it's about when you see an idea and see something, not procrastinating on it, just getting in and doing it, you know, because timing doesn't last forever, right? Other people, there's these ideas out in the world, and if other people move on them, you know, it makes it harder for you to be that successful person there. Not impossible, but, you know, I think a lot of entrepreneurs will procrastinate on really good ideas that they could get out into the world. Andreas says his skill is birth time rectifications. That's a beautiful specialist skill, Andreas. So that's where someone doesn't know their time of birth, and there are processes that astrologers can go through to get much more clearer. And it's funny, I've got a story around that. So I originally didn't know my exact birth time, and I went through a rectification process, and they got to, this person said they thought it was 2:53 a.m. And then I found my birth chart rectification, and it was 2:35. So the numbers were like reversed, but it was the right rising sign, very, very, very similar placements within that like 20 or 30 minute gap. But yeah, rectification is great. It's particularly good for people that were adopted, people whose parents have died. There's lots of reasons why people don't have their birth time detail, but that is something great. So platforms for e-courses, I've used lots of different platforms. At the moment, the Academy is moving over to Teachable. I've used Thinkific. I've used WordPress plugins. I've used all sorts of stuff. Tammy says, I'm sure I have no idea what you speak of. Procrastination. Yeah, we're all guilty of it. I am too, with my Oracle deck, right? I've gotten my students to hold me accountable now, because I've got all of this resistance to getting it out there, but I know it needs to get out there. And when I showed some of the ladies on the retreat, and my friend, who some of you might know because she's very successful, Denise Duffield Thomas, was there with me on the retreat. She was like, Catherine, this deck is ready. Like, it is done. You know, and I needed to hear that, right? I just needed, and coming from her, it means a lot too, but I needed someone to say, this is good enough. This is good enough to put out into the world. Like, it needs to be put out into the world. So that was good. It is going out, it's going to get out, right? I'm going to move through this resistance, and I'm just going to deal with it. But it happens to a lot of us. Yeah, I've never liked Udemy. They seem to be also very cheap courses. Mine have always been more premium courses, and yeah, Udemy just never appealed to me. All right, so I think that's it for today, guys. Thanks for being with me. Oh, Beth says, I love that. We need people to see our potential. Absolutely, absolutely. Denise and I are also working on a secret squirrel project that will launch at some point, but it could take a while, but that's really exciting too. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about fears and limiting beliefs, all of the stuff that typically come up when we want to bring astrology into our business. We want to become an astrologer. We want to study astrology. There's a lot of stuff that comes up. So we're going to be going through that tomorrow. But thanks for being here, everyone. It's been so lovely to connect with you all. All right. See you later, guys. Bye. See ya.